Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a beautiful Wednesday, evening, day, morning, whatever time it is where you are. Everything should be up and running, so I think I might be seeing a slight delay here on the Facebook thing, but oh, there we go. Yes, it's everything is live. Fantastic. So welcome to this Facebook Live where I'm going to be answering your guys' questions about music, singing, spirituality, and then at the end we're going to do a live improvised chant together, and I will explain how that works later. So if you're coming here from Yoka Kanoa, welcome. You guys know me there from my music. If you're coming from the Voice Shaman page, then you're also very welcome. And you're coming there then about the music and spirituality and voice topics. So today we actually have some pretty amazing things to cover. I actually got a good number of questions over the last 2 weeks, and especially not only from asking you guys directly, but also in conversations that I've had with people about singing topics. A lot of cool stuff came up. So what we're going to talk about today, though, are two things. Number one, how to keep your composure when you're singing, especially if it's like a funeral or a serious event like that, a sacred event, or that extends into very emotional music. The second thing that we're going to cover is the importance of visualization when you're singing. And then after that, we're going to do the live chant together. So to get started, over the last few weeks, I've talked to a number of people who are themselves starting to do work in sacred singing. They're singing at funerals and they're singing at, they're doing keening. And the question came up a number of times: how do you sing? How do you perform without getting really choked up, in particular with something very serious and emotional like a funeral? And I just thought it was a beautiful topic to cover, and it's a very interesting topic to cover as well. So essentially, and we're going to start with that. So essentially, when you are singing in service of XYZ, it's important to remember in that moment that you are in service of this greater event, this body of people who are there mourning or celebrating, in the case of maybe a welcoming ceremony for a new baby or a wedding. But in any case, you as the singer in that moment, yes, it's your job to feel, but more than feeling, it's your job to allow the energy of the feeling to transport through you and out into the audience. What does that mean? It is impossible to expect a singer who is using their body as an instrument. It's impossible to expect that person to feel nothing when singing at something like a funeral. However, it is our responsibility as singers in this context to do our work ahead of time, to process what's going on emotionally and to prepare so that we can take those emotions, we can take that highly charged energetic state and have calmness within ourselves so that we can facilitate an experience for those who are listening and those who are in the middle of their own mourning process in the case of a funeral. So how do you do that? The first and most important thing when preparing music for a funeral or for some sacred event where it's pretty serious and emotions are going to run high is it's extremely important that you do your own work ahead of time. What does that mean? Now, depending upon the context of the event, depending upon how close you are to maybe the one who has passed on, it will kind of dictate maybe how much time you need to take. If you're singing, for instance, for a family member's funeral, it's going to maybe take more time to process through the grief that you're going to be feeling before you're prepared to sing for the funeral, for the ceremony for others. If you are hired as a shaman or a singer or some other spiritual facilitator to sing or keen for a funeral or a releasing ceremony, It might not be as emotional for you, but then if you're very empathic, you might be absorbing the emotions, the highly charged emotions of the people who were there. So that's something to navigate. But in essence, the important thing is, as I said, give yourself time before the event, as much time as you can and as you need to process what's going to happen ahead of time. So if you are singing, for instance, for your grandmother, for her funeral, this is something that I did when my grandmother passed away a number of years ago. You know that it's going to be emotional. You know that it's going to be highly charged. And it's important for you to process what you're feeling long in advance of the funeral, as long as advance notice as you have. Oftentimes, especially with Western funerals, we don't have a whole lot of advance notice, maybe a couple days, maybe a week. So, within reason. But what you want to do is you want to go in and you want to sit with your grief, and you want to let that first waves of grief and emotion, tears, sorrow, anger, all of the stages, you want to allow them to move through you, so that when you get to this kind of supercharged time of the funeral, you've already released your first wave of emotion. Because when you get to the funeral, or when you get to the event where you are now having also an audience who's listening, and an audience who is mourning, self-sourcing in that moment is going to be very, very important. And we're going to get to that. That's the second part of what's in of the technique to kind of sing at a funeral that we're going to get to. But essentially, self-sourcing, staying in your center, staying in your body is going to be really important there. So I'll give you an example. So my grandma died a number of years ago, I think 2013, but I don't remember the exact date. I'm horrible with dates, but she died a long time ago. But about 15 years before she died, she told me that she wanted me to sing at her funeral. So yes, okay, one could argue I had plenty of time to prepare, but you never can really prepare for death, even if you know that the person is dying and is old, or, there's another thing going on. But what she basically did is 15 years before her funeral, she went to her church director. She got some sheet music. I came up to her house one day. She slapped the sheet music in my hand and said, "I want you to sing this song at my funeral." Grandma, no. I mean, okay, I'll honor your wish, but I don't want to talk about it. Stop. I'm old. It's going to happen someday. It is my wish that you sing at my funeral. Okay. So I take the song, I learn the song. The first thing is to learn all the technical stuff in the song so that you aren't having to navigate, working through difficult vocal sections in the middle of the funeral when you're high emotion. But then when she actually passed away and I had the sheet music, of course I learned the song that she wanted, but I wanted to sing something beyond that song to honor her. And in this moment, my dad actually volunteered to accompany me on the piano. So my dad and I performed at my grandmother's funeral, who was my mom's mom. Now, of course, her death was a shock, as death is. And it was really important. And also everybody who was there in mourning, of course, were my family members and loved ones. So having empathy and feeling their emotion and their love and their loss amplified my emotion, of course. So what was important for me and what I did is, as I prepared for the funeral and I rehearsed with my dad, and maybe in your case, you're rehearsing with a rehearsal pianist, or you're doing it with a recording, kind of karaoke or playback style, run the piece enough times with the person in mind so that the emotion starts to move through and you can feel where it's moving through the voice. Chances are high that there will be some section in the song that brings the emotion up in you. So a climactic part, or a part where the chords become very beautiful. Maybe they're minor. Maybe the tempo gets faster. There's going to be a part of the song that you're also going to feel kind of triggered and emotional. So map out the song ahead of time so you know where those places are. And then as you're performing, you have the music well enough prepared that then you're able to navigate the stuff that's coming at you in the moment by then applying some of these other techniques, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So number one, give yourself enough time to process your grief and all of the emotions that are possible to come up based upon the event that you're doing, a funeral or something like that. so that you have time to arrive with your stuff processed as much as possible. So that's number one. Number two, remember in this moment that when you go to perform at a funeral, you are of service. It is not, okay, now I say this, take it with a grain of salt, but in that moment when you're performing, it's not your time to mourn. Your emotional self steps slightly aside and gives way and your emotional self opens up into this facilitation of moving the emotion for others or helping others move emotion through the voice. Now, there are traditions, lamenting traditions, where the person singing is responsible for bringing forth the emotion and feeling the emotion, transmuting the emotion for the people present. So I'm not talking about those contexts exactly. I'm also not well versed in those contexts. So over time, as I learn more about those traditions, I'm sure that I will change my tune a little bit. But what I'm speaking of right now is more of the Western context, singing at a Western funeral, or singing like a chant or something like this at a funeral. So, and in that moment, then it is your responsibility to hold the space with the voice and use the voice and funnel your emotion into the space so that these people who are there with you can transmute their sorrow and their feelings in the cauldron that you've created with your sacred song. So remembering that you're in service is just a great way to kind of bring you back into the moment. And the third thing then that you want to do is when you're singing, so when you're in the actual event, it's going to be sometimes very difficult to maneuver and navigate the things coming towards you. So these are the times when you return to your breath and you return to your technique. You'll know, okay, in order to avoid this, frog in my throat because I feel the tears coming up, I'm going to make sure, put my hand on my lower stomach, I'm going to make sure that I release the breath all the way down, release the musculature all the way down so that I free up this space that's starting to tighten with emotion. So as you're singing and as you're singing in the event itself, you are concentrating on the flow of the air. It's like chanting. It's like chanting in a meditative way. You're focusing on the flow of the air. You're focusing on the vibration of the frequencies. You're focusing on the beauty and the purity of the vowels with the intention of creating space for the people listening to mourn. It's not the time, it's not the time for you to mourn in that moment when you're singing. Right after, go for it. It's very, very, very difficult to sing and keep composure when it's such a highly charged emotional setting like a funeral. But it's possible. Many people do it. And I myself have also done it in a number of different contexts, from hired singer at a funeral to actually singing for my own grandmother. So I promise it's possible. This is the time when you kind of lean into your technique, you lean into the muscle memory and the physical memory that your body has, and you sing with trust and unconditional love for everybody that's present, and you just go from there. So that is the first question that we're going to answer tonight. And the second question also came up this week, and I actually posted about it on Instagram. And it has to do with, in the context of my conversations this week, how do you combat negative self-esteem, or the inner voice in your head that's like telling you that you're a crappy singer or you're not gonna be able to do it? How do you move past that? What's some techniques to move past that? And what I came up with and wanted to talk with you guys about tonight is the importance of visualization. Now, everybody has heard of visualization in some sense or another. Many of us do our, vision boards on the new year, or we want to manifest a new partnership. So we make a partnership board. I have a friend who actually, she did that and manifested the man of her dreams. So amazing. So we know visualization works. We know visual manifestation works. And it's not different for the voice. And actually, it's not different for anybody that's doing something at a high level. So what do I mean by that? Professional athletes are well known for visualizing before an event. A runner will sit at the starting line, or rather stand. They'll stand at the starting line and they will run through the entire race. If they're jumping hurdles, they will run through how all the steps, the whole race, the steps that it takes to get to each hurdle, the jump, the next steps, the jump, the next steps, the jump. And they will visualize themselves at the pace they want to go, making it to the finish line. Organized sports do this as well. They have their pep talks and they have their kind of, like rallying events right before a match. An American football team, you see these videos of them pumping each other up in the locker room before, like, who's going to win? We're going to win. Basically, this is all visualization technique, and why this applies to music and singing is really important. No professional athlete, singer, musician, CEO of a company, no one successful sits before an event and goes, I'm going to totally eat it. This is going to be horrible. Like, everyone's going to hate me. There might be a voice in the back of the head, a little sabotage voice that's going to say that. But there's not a winning soccer team, for instance, that's going to win if everybody on the team thinks that they're going to lose that match. It's not going to happen. They have already decided with their belief system that it's not going to happen. So how does that apply to singing? If you have already decided before you sing a song that you're not able to sing it, or that you're not going to sing it well, it's not going to happen. It's the limiting belief systems. And what I found with a lot of my students is that the limiting belief systems and the psychological things that we've attached to the voice and projected onto the voice are most often more blocking than an actual lack of vocal technique. So the very feeling of fear of the high note. I mean, we talked 2 weeks ago that there are no high notes, but for all intents and purposes, that's what I mean. You think about the high note and you go, oh, I love the song, but every time I hit that high note, every time I get to that high note, I just totally ruin the song. If you've already decided that before you open your mouth, your musculature is already prepared to get tense on that part. So when I was in college and studying, I actually went to a program called Opera Works one summer. We did this amazing exercise that completely changed the way everybody sang. 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. That's it. What we did is, and this is the technique that I want to teach you guys tonight. The importance of visualization. When you are preparing to sing a song and it's something that maybe you find to be difficult, or you found difficulty in the past, close your eyes and go through the song in your mind at least 3 times, imagining singing the entire song with ease and with beauty. Now, it's best if you can do it with some sort of playback or accompaniment. So if you're doing like a karaoke, there's lots of great karaoke tracks on YouTube too, a lot of popular songs. If you're working with an accompanist or a guitarist or, a band, and you're having problems with the song, maybe you're preparing for a gig or something, let them play through the whole song and imagine yourself singing with ease. And if you can handle it, if you can have the patience, don't open your mouth to sing until you can actually imagine making it through the whole song with ease. Now, what happens when you do that, when we use our imagination, when we use visualization, we have already primed our body and our musculature to perform the right way, to do the right movements and the right techniques to get the sound out that we want. Very often the body doesn't know the difference between what's in our mind and what's actually happening outside in reality. So if you're telling yourself, I can't do it, it's not going to happen. You've taught your body you can't do it. If you though visualize it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then you open your mouth, it's going to be amazing. You will be amazed at all of a sudden technical issues that you thought you had have completely gone away, because now there's no longer a psychological limitation. You guys got to try this. It's incredible. Now, slight caveat. I wouldn't do this technique if, for instance, you are an untrained opera singer and you want to sing an aria and you're like, okay, well, I can just visualize it. So, and then you try an aria, that might be a recipe for hurting your voice a little bit. It's as, you wouldn't try to run a marathon just because you visualized a marathon. There is a physical training element that's important to keep in mind when you're, preparing a song, especially as it increases in technical difficulty. So this visualization technique is not a replacement of vocal technique, but it is an incredible enhancement to vocal training and to pedagogical training, because it can kind of dust off and kick away those kind of final or maybe deeply rooted weird things that we think about ourselves and our own voices, that actually you're not technically having a problem with. It's just something in your mind. So that's my tip. Those are actually the 2 questions that were asked for today. And now what I'd like to do with you guys, which we did last time, is do an improvised chant. So we're going to use our shruti box here. We used this last time, this beautiful instrument. And when I was preparing for this evening, yes, we're going to improvise the chant, but I kind of had the feeling that I wanted to work with the vowels ah and oo as an exercise for us to practice the difference between the oo vowel. The oo is very internal. It's creating space inside the body. It's very much about the personal space, vibrating the head, vibrating the body. And then ah, opening up into the world, and then coming back into the oo, coming back into the body, into the self, and then reopening up. So it's kind of this ebb and flow going in and out. It's a kind of yin and yang experience of singing out and then having the sound be within yourself. So we're going to do this the same as last time. I will start and I will find a melody that seems to be kind of flowing for this moment. Once the melody is set, I will give a signal and I'll sing the melody a few times so that you guys can start singing along with me. Once you guys are singing and you feel comfortable with the melody, I'll start to noodle around and kind of float around and improvise on the melody. So if you're listening and singing at the same time, what you're going to hear is that you're singing a melody and I'm noodling around above you or below somewhere. And then after that, I'm going to switch back to the melody to give you an opportunity to experiment with me as the foundation of the song. So I'll be singing the melody, I'll be creating that foundation, that support, and you can experiment with your voice, try different vowels, try different vocal ranges, maybe try different sounds, growls, breaths. Really interesting experience, or an interesting opportunity to practice. And then after that, I'll return to the melody. We'll sing the melody together if you're singing with me, and then we will end the session. So if that's clear, then I will go ahead and start the beautiful chant, the ooh-ah chant, practicing singing within and then opening to the outside space. Okay, we're going to put on the reverb. Hopefully this time I remember to turn off the reverb, so it doesn't sound like I'm singing in this or speaking in this epic place afterwards. Okay. Ooh, ah. Ah. So now if you're singing along, feel free to improvise and explore on top of the melody until we come back together to sing the melody at the end. Here we go. Trust yourself if you're singing along to explore your voice, make some interesting sounds, experiment with different vowels and growls and anything that wants to come out right now. If you have the space, let yourself explore. More rounds of improv for you. Let yourself explore on the melody. Sing free. Move your body with the improv. Let yourself sing. sang along with me, take a second and feel how the body feels now after singing the chant. Maybe you'll notice the room or the space feels thicker. Maybe you'll have the sound ringing in your ears of your own voice. Maybe there's more of a weight and a relaxation in the body. Or maybe that was uncomfortable and you're feeling tension somewhere. Just observe what you're feeling. Or if you were just listening, also observe how that felt for you, how that arrived in the body. A couple breaths together. Feel free to wiggle or move the body a little bit. Bring some movement back. And we return to the space of voice shaman Q&A that we left shortly before we started the chant. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for this beautiful Q&A. I appreciate you watching, and I appreciate also all the questions that you guys submitted in advance. I'm going to be doing this every 2 weeks. So the next session is going to be on Wednesday, May 5th. I think that's the date. Yeah, Wednesday, May 5th. Same time, same place here on Facebook. Submit your questions if you are wondering anything, if any vocal stuff comes up for you, or you want to know anything about singing, shamanism, sacred singing, shamanic singing, spirituality, all that stuff put together. You guys know where to find me. And I appreciate you again being here. Next events, like I said, Facebook Live on the 5th. On Sunday, this Sunday, I'm hosting my Moon Mana session. We're going to be exploring the Morrigan, the Irish goddess of the Morrigan, and we're going to be making a sacred burlagui, which is essentially a medicine bundle, a sacred bundle that we are going to then return to the earth with our wishes and desires and things that we'd like to offer back for transmutation. So if that sounds good and you are a woman of any form, you are welcome. Other than that, thank you guys again, and I will see you next time. Until then, blessed, blessed, blessed. Bye. I'm stopping.